Hello you dirty dogs and welcome back to One on One, the most in-depth football show on YouTube. On today's episode, I'll be reacting to the news that FIFA are considering a proposal that would see the Men's and Women's World Cup played every other year. Of course, traditionally, the Men's World Cup has been played every 4 years since its inception in 1930, and the Women's Tournament has followed suit since it began in 1991. So it's safe to say that this would represent a huge change in the football landscape as we know it. And let's be honest, FIFA wouldn't have publicly announced they were doing a study unless they were confident of the results. It would appear that they think they might just be able to pull it off. So in this episode, we'll be looking to address the following points. Why is this happening? Who is for and against it? And what would it mean for the rest of football? Before we dive in, I want your initial thoughts in the comments below. Hit pause, I want your knee-jerk reaction. Also, as the video progresses, give me a like if you learn something new. Don't want to just ask you for it these days, I want to bloody earn it. Let's go. Now, the idea was pitched by the Saudi Arabian Football Federation at the last annual FIFA Congress, and it received support from a whopping 166 nations with only 22 opposing it. Yeah, I can hear ya. Why is Saudi Arabia, of all people, bringing this to the table? And why are FIFA allowing a country condemned by watchdogs such as Amnesty International over issues such as human rights to lead the conversation when it comes to World Cup reform? Good questions. Whether Saudi Arabia are a fitting host for a World Cup is an entirely different topic. However, what we can take from the kingdom spearheading the biennial movement is this: there are countries itching to spend their wealth to become part of the football fraternity. Now, this isn't Panorama. I can't categorically say it's all for political gain, but to clarify, World Cups do not make countries money. In fact, they very rarely pay for themselves. But countries can't leverage the popularity of the World Cup to redefine their image on a global scale if it continues to be a closed shop, i.e. if it's only on every 4 years, or if the waiting list outlasts various regimes. Let's use some basic numbers to paint a picture. There are 211 federations within FIFA. Only 79 nations have ever qualified for the World Cup, and only 58 of them have been there more than once, or roughly 27% of FIFA's membership. With that in mind, you can begin to understand why there would be a groundswell of support for more frequent tournaments amongst nations that aren't traditional football powerhouses. If India, one of the most populous nations on earth, can't qualify for the World Cup, then what chance do the likes of Finland, Zambia, Kenya, Thailand, Vietnam and co. stand? Not to mention there's already a backlog of established nations just waiting to host another World Cup. England being one, Argentina being another, Spain. South America's only hosted the tournament once since 1978. Africa as a continent has only hosted it once, full stop. So, safe to say that we can put hosting duties at the top of our list. Now, in modern day football, most of the money is generated by the top clubs and UEFA through the Champions League. Now, in 2019 alone, which was of course a non-World Cup year, UEFA made $4 billion more than FIFA. And when the World Cup does come around and FIFA generate an absolute shed load of cash, it would appear that that money is often earmarked for things that have come prior. For example, the $4.6 billion raised at the 2018 World Cup in Russia made up for the losses in the 3 non-World Cup years that preceded it. A point that really emphasises that all of FIFA's eggs are in one basket. As such, they can't maintain pace with the commercial endeavours of the top clubs and UEFA, and are perhaps worried that if this continues to happen over a sustained period of time, it will dilute their influence. So let's just put balancing the books down as the second one, shall we? Interestingly, it would appear that FIFA President Gianni Infantino's latest approach is all about spreading the love. In a recent statement, Infantino said, "We want the rest of the world and the rest of Europe, which is not part of the elite, to grow as well, and at a much higher pace. We do not see equal opportunities throughout the world. We do not see too much solidarity either. It is our responsibility at FIFA to address the imbalance." Now, the reason that I labelled this approach interesting is because Infantino's critics have pointed out that the president knew about the failed Super League long before it entered the public domain. I mean, just take a look at this headline from the New York Times. The Super League thought it had a silent partner, FIFA. Publicly, soccer's global governing body criticised a breakaway European Super League. Privately, it held talks for months with the founders about endorsing the competition. I mean, the head of the Spanish league, Javier Tebas, went one step further, openly calling Infantino one of the masterminds behind the breakaway league. FIFA as the vanguards of solidarity and equal opportunity. Really? Now, with this radical proposal, FIFA have been much smarter than their Super League counterparts. In Arsene Wenger, who is FIFA's chief of global football development, whatever that means, Infantino has wisely picked a face that everyone either trusts or is willing to give a chance to explain to them. In fact, the former Arsenal manager has even been called the driving force behind the idea. In May of this year, Wenger said that he wanted to see the World Cup and European Championships played every 2 years and have FIFA kick out all the rest, including UEFA's new Nations League tournament. But even without the Nations League, the calendar is still stacked. So where does player welfare come into this proposal? A good time to segue into UEFA's opposition to this idea. Now, unsurprisingly, UEFA's head honcho Alexander Seferin has admitted that he has grave concerns over the plan. In a recent press conference, he stated that "we think that the Jewel of the World Cup has value precisely because of its rarity." Seferin also highlighted his concerns about the impact on players, adding, "They don't need to see more of their summers spent on consuming tournaments rather than devoted to relaxing and recuperation." However, FIFA have vowed that under this design, there will be reduced matches and enhanced recovery time. The Premier League has also weighed in with its opposition to the idea, but the African Confederation has backed the study and there is growing support in Asia. So UEFA, not for the first time in the last 12 months, really has a battle on its hands here in order to get its own way. Now, Wenger has proposed just 2 international breaks, one in October and one in March, and groups of 4 nations playing just 6 qualifying games in order to get them to said competition. The Frenchman believes that this will ensure more high stakes and more high emotion games. He also believes that by having just 2 international breaks per year, it will appeal to the leading clubs, who will have their players for longer and with less disruptions, i.e. players will spend significantly less time travelling. At the moment, a club like Liverpool that has a truly diverse global squad faces up to 5 international breaks across the course of a season. Wenger is also proposing a compulsory 25-day rest period for his players after international tournaments. Okay, so this is starting to sound a little bit more reasonable, right? Well, if you factor in a 25-day break immediately after a 4-week tournament, this means that players will be away from their clubs for around 2 months, which we'd imagine the big clubs who want to go on lucrative pre-season tours might take issue with. Also, can World Cup qualification really be boiled down to just 6 qualifiers? UEFA has 55 member nations, and even with the expanded 48-team World Cup, it's only due to have 16 participants. So if you're only playing 6 qualifiers, that means 14 groups, and some of them will have Andorra and San Marino in. If that was the case, how does this lead to more high stakes, high emotion games that Wenger promised? And the maths gets even more complicated for the likes of Africa and South America. So maybe some pre-qualifiers for the lower ranked teams would be the remedy to this situation. A little bit like Premier League clubs coming in at the 3rd round of the FA Cup. But then how many associations will realistically vote for fewer matches that make it harder to qualify? And also, FIFA is still going to want their expanded Club World Cup, right? So unless continental confederations give up their tournaments like the Copa America, the AFCON, the European Championships, some summers would theoretically have side-by-side tournaments. I would like to see how this fits into FIFA's feasibility plan. So many questions, so few answers, really. I mean, having embarked on his study in May, Wenger has suggested that a watertight proposal could be put forward by December. Given UEFA's strong opposition, this feels like an oversell. Plus, the international calendar is already set in stone up until the 2026 World Cup, so no change could take place until 2028 at the very earliest. There's also a Euros in 2028, so they'd probably wait until 2030. Until I saw a proposal that outlines how a biennial World Cup would be transformative for all these various members this feels like nothing more than a power play. If Infantino and Wenger spelled out how this was going to make a sizable change to football in Syria, Zambia, Palestine, and Nepal, I might be semi-interested. What I don't care for as a football fan is Gulf states who are trying to make their economies less dependent on oil by leveraging things such as the World Cup. If we're going to do away with tradition, it better be for an extremely humanistic reason. Show me social mobility on a mass scale, and I might show this a little support. Until then, I think it's smart that everyone remains extremely skeptical. I mean, it was only a year ago that US prosecutors were accusing FIFA executive members of receiving bribes in order to vote for various World Cups. And it's not even that I'm totally against diluting UEFA's influence. I mean, they've had it coming to an extent, haven't they? Creating a bigger divide between the haves and have-nots by constantly, placating the bigger clubs and stuffing their coffers full of vast amounts of cash, made pretty evident in the latest round of UCL reforms. So much new information is coming to light that I'll definitely have to do a part 2. I hope for now you feel like you have a better understanding of it, and that this information will help you critique anything you hear from here on in. But until things become a little bit clearer, I am very, very keen to hear your thoughts. So get at me in the comments below. I'll be hitting you up, like always, in the first hour. If you enjoyed this video, please do hit that like button, as it really does help with the algorithm. And consider subscribing to Eurofootball Daily with notifications turned on. Only had a day to script that. Annoying. So much there. See you next time.